Imagine by Bernard King and Nicholas Lumarine. Gemma and Jerome's affair is now the plotline for Gemma's author husband, the jealous Nicholas. Jerome's scheme, Jerome believes, to kill Nicholas is faultless. Yet, could the all-seeing, all-hearing Nicholas be already writing it into his book? And is Nicholas completing his method to kill Gemma? Who will strike and win first? It was go. She woke him at 6, his fixed telephone ringing madly in the hall downstairs. She would program the car park he described in the GPS in Nicholas's car and would deliver him at 3 o'clock. Her call was made from a public call box, as Jerome had instructed, and lasted 10 seconds. He dropped the receiver. There were things he had to say to Gemma, but maybe her cutting the conversation short had been fortunate. He had wanted to tell her about Charlie and the cult, but perhaps it was not the time. They were both starting a day that would be different from anything they had experienced before. With tension building across his shoulders, he crossed into the kitchen, opened the window, and took several deep breaths. It was pointless going through the day that was to come. He had rehearsed detail upon detail most of the night. With the grenade, he would also take a pistol and leave the bayonet. If Nicholas was aware of what was to happen, he might be armed. Jerome would be forced to shoot him with his pistol. Not the route he wanted, but it was better than being shot himself. Now another detail was niggling him. The more it niggled, the more it morphed from detail to importance. With the murder being brought forward, he would have to call in sick at work. It was changes like that trapped people. He did not exist in Nicholas's life. The police could not possibly knock on his door. But nevertheless, an incident like that was a speck. But specks could join up with other specks, and then more specks, until the specks of nothing became something to be noticed. But if he did not call in, his work would call him, and he would not be at home. It would be the first time in 5 years it had happened, and that was something more to be noted. He picked up the phone, covered the mouthpiece with a handkerchief, and gave the best imitation of an influenza victim he could cough up. The Lemon arrived about 9 and parked opposite his house. He would sit there until it became dark. Jerome hardly glanced at his car each evening when he arrived home. He could tell the Lemon he was wasting his time, that his £230,000 lady was dead. He could tell the police that one of his wife's Lemon was outside his house. He could invite the Lemon to the funeral when it took place. He could, but he wouldn't. Jennifer was a problem in his life that had now passed, and he had no intention of following it. He turned away from his lemon gazing through the window. He had revising to do. Bringing forward the murder brought forward problems. Gemma would have to wait in his car in the supermarket car park. He didn't like the idea. She might be seen, but with the time so short, there was nothing else she could do. After the murder, he would walk back, not along the main road, but via small lanes that avoided a village and the local town. He hoped the lanes would be deserted. His information had come from a hurriedly purchased ordnance survey map that showed only a few houses on his route. On his return from the quarry, he would drive to the nearest town, drop Gemma at the station, and vanish back into his prosaic existence. There his thoughts ended. What his future with Gemma would be was impossible to foresee. Right now they were close, bonded by Nicholas and his book. But now the book would never be finished, and Nicholas would be taken out of their lives. That left a rich, sophisticated widow and a poor and definitely unsophisticated security guard. That mix did not gel. Did she love him? He honestly did not know. He had slept and passed the last 2 weeks with her, yet when they were together it was all drama. He had never spent a soft, tender day with her. She was a dynamo that did not stop. When the present scene was over, it was quite possible he would never see her again, or they could move in together. But really, the only thing he could be certain of was that their future would not be normal, mundane, or usual. Gemma did not live like that. He drove carefully out of London, not along the motorways, but down the old A roads, avoiding the all-seeing cameras and fewer traffic patrols. Turning into the entrance to the supermarket car park, it seemed his idea had worked. Not one blue beacon of a police car had crossed his path. The finer details of the plan were simple. Swap car keys with Gemma and drive out of the car park in Gemma's car with her drunken husband in the back. She had assured him her husband would be asleep. He scanned the car park looking for Gemma. There were several men sitting in cars waiting for their wives to finish shopping, but none appeared to be asleep. It was his first mistake. Gemma had not told him, and he had not asked the make of Nicholas's car and where it would be parked. A small error that could be easily rectified, but nevertheless an error, and he could not afford any mistakes. The car was a Mercedes, and the woman driving it was Gemma. She drove past and parked. The figure in the back was in reclining mode and did not stir as she closed the door. Surprised, he watched as she ignored him and entered the supermarket. For Christ's sakes, they had to exchange keys. He had watched as she slipped hers into her pocket. It was natural for him to walk into the supermarket carrying a plastic shopping bag. Most shoppers entered with bags empty, ready to fill with their purchases. Gemma's was already a quarter full and heavy. The hand grenade and the pistol banged uncomfortably against his leg. He wandered down the aisles, stopping at junctions, searching for Gemma. His phone rang as he reached the beer shelves. Fifth shelf, third can along. On the top, take the keys and leave yours in their place. He was pissed out of his head. He's asleep, car by the entrance. The phone went dead. He looked up and down the aisle. This had not been in their script, but it was a safe twist. They had purchased 2 cheap payphones in case of emergency that would be destroyed at the end of the crime. With no sign of humanity watching or waiting, he swiftly exchanged the keys. Reaching across, he picked up a pack of beer, stuffed it into his bag, and made for the cashier. The queue was short. Placing the beer on the moving mat, he moved forward slowly. "The bag, sir." The cashier looked over her till and pointed at his plastic bag. Jerome closed his eyes. Christ. A security guard, leaning casually against the exit, threw a glance towards him. What a bloody idiot. The stupidity of his stupidity hit him. The bag, of course. They would want to look in the bag. And there was a notice saying so above the cashier. "I bought the beer. There's nothing in the bag from this shop," he said. It was lame. He knew it wouldn't satisfy the girl. "We have to check." The girl pointed up to the notice. With a thrust back of his shoulders, the security guard unstuck himself from the entrance and wandered towards them. Refusal would cause problems. Placing a grenade and a pistol in front of the shoppers would cause more. Ditching the beer and running would blow his plan to bits. And anyway, the security guard was blocking the exit with his legs apart and his thumbs hooked in his belt. He passed the bag across to the cashier. Her groping hand closed on the pistol. Drawing it out, she placed it on the mat. The security guard's eyes popped. Her second deposit was the grenade. She looked at Jerome and then at the security guard. "I know what that is." The pistol spun once from the prod of her finger. "But what's that?" "It's a hand grenade." The guard stepped forward, swiftly snatching the grenade. Jerome could pick up the pistol and threaten, get his grenade back and escape. If the guard intervened, he could hit him with the pistol. Jerome was astonished at how calmly he was thinking. He transferred his weight to his right foot, opening his hand to grab the gun. "Are they real?" The girl's question was directed at Jerome. "Of course not." The guard dropped the grenade back on the mat. "But they're bloody good copies." Jerome changed his snatch to a slow take, putting the gun back in his bag. The guard rolled him the grenade. "We don't have barcodes for those," he laughed. Jerome somehow managed to find a grin and heard himself muttering some rubbish about toys for the grandchildren. The cashier clanked the beer on top of the weapons and pushed the bag past the till. He was free. He did not deserve to be. It had been a stupid mistake, and also the second one. He must pause, gather himself, discipline himself, not to make any more. Sliding his credit card back in his wallet, he stopped in horror. Too late. He stared at his reflection in the supermarket window. He had just made another. He had paid for his beer with a credit card. Plastic was traceable. He shook his head at his reflection, which promptly shook its head back. He was not performing well. Gemma was obviously coping better, especially with the way she had engineered the key change. Pursing his lips with annoyance, he scanned the car park for Gemma's car. Again, she was working well. He had parked in the first available space. Gemma had left her car next to and facing the exit. He did not look in the rear of the car as he slid behind the wheel, but was vaguely aware of a presence on the back seat. Propped on the steering wheel was an envelope. "Read this." The order was made more urgent, being printed in bright red. The envelope was slipped in his pocket with his left hand, and the key turned in the ignition by his right. In his state of tension, Jerome doubted he would be able to read anything. "Hello." The slur was from Nicholas. The greeting made the hair on the back of Jerome's neck shoot up. "Hello." Jerome managed a croak. Nicholas was supposed to be asleep. "Who are you?" "Your new driver." "New driver? Got a drink?" Thankfully he had. Tearing open the packing, Jerome passed one of his cans of beer behind him. "Thanks." The metal click, the eager hiss, and the gurgle of deep drinking established the can was being put to good use. They would be in the quarry in 10 minutes. He would leave the pistol in the car. It would be blown to bits when the grenade went off. Jerome drove with one eye on the driving mirror and the other on the road, tensed, ready for movement from Nicholas. But the mirror returned a clear view of the rear of the vehicle, unimpeded by the form of his victim. While passing Nicholas the beer, Jerome had slid the pistol out of the bag, the weight of the weapon pressed reassuringly in his lap. And now, with slow, careful movements, he eased the grenade out and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Have you got another?" Jerome passed back a second can of beer. "Thank you so much. You're a really excellent driver." This time the click and the hiss were followed by a giggle before the gurgle started. Nicholas was now really sauced up. "Goodbye." The draft across his face was caused by the rear window opening. Jerome rocketed into high tension. He searched the driving mirror, convinced a gun would be pointing at his neck. The clatter of metal hitting the road was followed by another giggle as Nicholas amused himself throwing the empty cans out of the window. Jerome relaxed. Nicholas was not acting out his book. Jerome's gaze searched the control console. Dazzled by unaccustomed swishes and knobs, it was several seconds before he found the rear door locking system. Quickly he jabbed all the doors locked. In his floating state, Nicholas might just want to go for a walk at 60 miles an hour. Thankfully, the lane leading to the quarry was empty, but the bump and thud as he smashed through the bushes and the gateway brought a reaction. "Whoa!" Nicholas was still awake. Thinking ahead, Jerome scarcely noticed the bone-shaking skid at the bottom of the quarry. His eyes were fixed on a mound of rocks 10 yards ahead. The car lurched to a stop, level with the mound. A quick glance through the windscreen at the cliff tops around the quarry, and he was ready. Nerves and the waves of panic, as usual, evaporated with action. Climbing out of the car, pulling out the grenade, and yanking open the door was supposed to be one controlled, easy movement. It took 3 snatches at the rear door handle, each one more desperate, before the winking red light at the dashboard told him he had locked himself out. Jabbing the release button, he fought down his self-imposed anger and stepped quickly out of the car. Nicholas was sprawled across the back seat. His stupid grin at Jerome as he opened the door caused a pause. A grin from someone invites a glance onto their face. Jerome froze as he looked into the man's eyes. There was something horribly wrong. This was not an enemy. He was not trying to take out Jerome. This was cold-blooded killing. But that was not the problem. There was something more. This was not the Nicholas Jerome had imagined. It was a fight to pull the firing pin that released easily. His battle raged with this sudden puzzlement. Still keeping the firing lever in his grasp, he handed the grenade to Nicholas. His hand grasped the grenade as if it were a glass, and he raised it to his lips as he flopped back onto the seat. Just a final hesitation for a glance at Nicholas, and Jerome threw himself backwards. Slamming the door in 4 huge leaps, he dived over the rocky pile. Earth gritting between his teeth and the smell of mud covering the quarry floor were unnoticed as he waited for the earth-shaking explosion. 1, 2, 3. The seconds dragged by in silence, each getting longer. The 6-second fuse was playing games. A head lifted above the rocks would be an invitation to have it blown off, but after 20 seconds had thumped by in time with the rising thud in his chest, something had to be done. His tension fought movement, allowing a very slow rise of his head, bringing the car into view. Nicholas was out of sight, apparently still flopped on the rear seat. Screwed eyes and pursed lips were Jerome's reaction to a scenario dreaded by soldiers: failed ordnance. There was nothing more deadly than a jammed firing pin or a half-dead fuse. A deep breath would be enough to set the grenade off. Another 20 seconds and Jerome acted. The 4 strides to the car were almost won. His eyes locked on the vehicle, convinced if he blinked he would disintegrate in the blast. A look through the window established the scene inside the car had not changed. Nicholas was asleep. His head sagged sideways into the corner of the seat. The grenade lay in his lap, his fingers still holding the firing lever firmly in position. To retrieve the grenade would be stupidity. If Nicholas moved even an inch, he could drop the grenade and blow them both to bits. And anywhere near the car was suicide. The hard floor of the quarry hurt as Jerome landed behind the rock mound. But though hard and dirty, it was 100% safer than standing next to a do-it-yourself suicide kit. What was he doing handing the grenade to Nicholas while still holding the firing lever in place? The grenade had to go off and fast. A lump of rock was prodding a hole in his side. He rolled away, then stopped. He knew another man who needed prodding. Getting to his knees, he carefully balanced himself, preparing his timing. With a deep breath, a spring to his feet, and with a final glance at the car, he swung his arm in a wide circle. The rock, heavy and high, sailed in a perfect arc. The dull thud of it hitting the roof was unsatisfactory. He had aimed at a window. What happened inside the car he could not know. He collapsed his legs instantly, falling forward off balance, his face again buried in the mud. The explosion was mind-numbing. Dazing, deafening, and burning his ears. It rained muck and stones. He covered his head with his hands, cursing for not bringing a head protector. The blast that still bounced his eardrums brought memories of the desert back. Jerome's eyes squeezed even tighter. He had forgotten the ear-cracking roar of high explosive. More muck, mud, and now metal peppered down, cutting and stinging his hands and the exposed part of his head. The smell of the explosion laced around him, biting and singeing into his clothing. The barrier of sound paralyzed his hearing, attenuating the clatter and echoes rattling off the high quarry walls. Then maybe there had been silence, but his breath, coming in gasps, and his shoes crunching on the quarry path, cracked it as he raced towards the exit. He glanced back just once. The smoke was rising from where the car had been. There would be bits scattered everywhere. the heavy parts, the engine and chassis, would be laying twisted somewhere. Nicholas would be no more, just the dripping red patches on the quarry walls. So, Nicholas is dead, Gemma and Jerome are now free, and also Imagine cannot be finished. Yet, you have been promised a book with 2 endings, but we have not reached the first ending yet. So, can you imagine the next episode of Imagine?